Three young men sit around a chessboard in a housing project courtyard, and one of them explains the rules to the other two. By the end of the series, all three of them are dead, and each one dies in the exact way his own words that afternoon predicted. The scene comes early, in the third episode of season 1, and it opens with a small correction. Bodhi and Wallace are sitting in the pit playing checkers, but they are playing it on a chessboard, because the chessboard is what somebody left lying around. D'Angelo Barksdale walks up and tells them they cannot do that. Bodhi pushes back. He says it is the same board, the same squares, the same game. D'Angelo says it is not, and then he does something that turns a throwaway moment into the most quoted scene in the show. He teaches them chess, but he does not teach it the way a chess player would. He teaches it as a map of the organization they all work for. The king, he says, is Avon Barksdale. The queen is Stringer Bell. The rooks are the stash houses. The pawns are them. That mapping is the first thing worth slowing down on, because D'Angelo is not reaching for a metaphor to make the lesson interesting. He is describing his actual life and using the pieces because the pieces happen to fit. He is not saying the drug trade is like chess. He is saying, here is what you are, here is what I am, here is who moves and who gets moved. And then he tells them the rules that matter. The king stays the king. Everything stays what it is. The king moves one square in any direction he chooses because he is the king, but he has no hustle in him, and he does not need any, because everybody else on the board has his back. The queen goes wherever she wants as far as she wants and gets things done. The pawns get capped quick. They are out of the game early. Wallace listens. Bodhi argues. And the way each of them responds to that board is the whole design of the scene, because they are not really responding to chess. They are each stating a theory about their own lives, out loud, in front of witnesses, in the third hour of a 60-hour show. The rest of the series is that theory being tested. Start with the tell that most people miss on a first watch. D'Angelo assigns a piece to everyone at that table except himself. He places Avon, he places Stringer, he places the stash, he places Bodhi and Wallace among the pawns. He never says what he is. He is standing over the board explaining it, and standing over a board is not a position on it. That is not sloppiness on the writer's part. That is the character. D'Angelo is Avon's nephew. He grew up inside this thing. He has always been told he is family rather than labor, and family means you are not one of the pieces, you are one of the people who understands the pieces. His entire idea of himself lives in that gap. Bodhi's answer is different, and it is the line everyone remembers. When D'Angelo tells him pawns get killed early, Bodhi does not deny it. He accepts the whole frame. He accepts that he is a pawn. What he refuses is the ending. He says that pawns get capped quick unless they are some smart-ass pawns. That is not bravado. That is Bodhi reading the rules carefully and finding the one that helps him. Because chess does contain a rule that says a piece can stop being what it started as. A pawn that crosses the entire board becomes a queen. It is the only promotion the game allows, and it is the only rule in chess where effort changes what you are. Bodhi hears that rule and takes it as a promise. Everything he does for the next 4 seasons follows from that moment. Wallace does neither of those things. He does not claim to be above the board, and he does not claim he can move up it. He asks how it works. He is the only person at that table who is actually treating chess as a game he is learning. He is a kid. He is the youngest person in the pit. He still has other kids sleeping in his room. And when the conversation turns to pieces getting taken, he does not have an argument ready, because he has not yet decided that any of this applies to him. That is who Wallace is, and it is the reason he is the first of the 3 to die. Now watch the fates, because they do not just happen to be tragic. They are precise. Wallace goes first. Later that same season, Stringer Bell decides Wallace is a risk, and the order comes down, and the 2 people sent to do it are Bodhi and Poot, the 2 boys he grew up beside. Wallace dies in a vacant house begging, and Bodhi has to be pushed by Poot to finish it. Think about that in terms of the board. Wallace never moved. He never advanced a square. He was taken off on the same ground he started on, by the pawns sitting right next to him. That is exactly what D'Angelo said would happen to pawns, and it happened to the one who never even got as far as having a strategy. The show does not give Wallace an arc. That absence is the point. Some pieces come off the board before the game develops, and the reason it feels unbearable is that the audience, like Wallace, had not yet decided he was a piece. D'Angelo goes second. He takes 20 years rather than testify against his family, and while he is inside, he finally starts pulling away from all of it, and Stringer Bell has him killed in a prison library and staged to look like a suicide. Look at what that means against the chess scene. The man who stood over the board and explained the pieces to everyone else is removed by the piece he himself identified as the queen. He was never above the game. He was in it the entire time, and worse, he was in it without knowing which square he occupied, which is the most dangerous way to be on a board. Every other person in that courtyard at least knew what they were. D'Angelo's death is what happens when you mistake understanding the rules for being exempt from them. He could name every piece except the one he was. Bodhi takes the longest, and his ending is the one that gives the scene its weight. He does everything he said he would do. He is a smart-ass pawn. He is disciplined. He never steals off a package. He never miscounts. He does what he is told. He holds a corner through a war. He survives the collapse of the entire Barksdale organization, and he is still standing when almost everyone from that courtyard is gone. He advances further than any pawn in the show, and the promotion never comes. There is no square he can reach that turns him into something else. He ends up working a corner for Marlowe Stanfield, a man he does not respect and cannot stomach, doing the same job he was doing as a teenager for less standing than he had before. And then the show does something deliberate enough that it removes any doubt about what the chess scene was for. In the last episode of Season 4, McNulty takes Bodhi out to an arboretum and buys him lunch and tries to turn him into an informant. Bodhi will not give up his own people. But he does say what he has worked out. He tells McNulty that the game is rigged, that he has been out there since he was a boy, that he did everything right and nothing came back, and that people like him are pawns on a chessboard. That is Bodhi quoting D'Angelo, years later, from memory, and reversing his own answer. In episode 3, he heard that pawns get taken early and replied that a smart one would not. In season 4, he says the game is rigged. Same metaphor, same speaker, opposite conclusion, and the distance between those two lines is his entire life. He did not fail to be smart. He was smart. He was, by any measure the trade uses, extremely good at it. What he learned is that the board he was playing on does not contain the rule he was counting on. Chess has promotion. The game Bodhi was in does not. There is no far side. There is only the corner, and the corner has no other end. He dies a few minutes later, and how he dies matters as much as that he does. Chris and Snoop come for him, and Poot tells him to run, and Bodhi refuses because it is his corner, and he has held it since he was a child. He goes down fighting them in the open, and it is O-Dog, coming out of a doorway behind him, who shoots him in the back of the head. Even the way he is killed refuses him the dignity of the fight he chose. He is standing his ground against the two people in front of him and is taken from behind by somebody he never saw, which is what happens to a piece that is worth removing but not worth confronting. There is one more move on that board, worth noticing, and it is the one that keeps the scene from being merely sad and makes it genuinely cold. D'Angelo said, "The king has no hustle." He said it almost as a joke, as the thing that makes the king slightly ridiculous. The king shuffles one square at a time in any direction he likes and does nothing useful, and everyone else on the team has his back. But run the whole series against that description. Stringer Bell, the queen, the piece that goes anywhere and gets things done, is shot dead in an empty building. D'Angelo, who tried to step off, is strangled. Wallace, who never moved, is executed. Bodhi, who moved constantly, is shot on his corner. And Avon Barksdale, the king, the one piece described as having no hustle, is still alive at the end of the show. He is in prison, which is not nothing, but he is breathing, and he is still Avon. The safest position on that board is the one that does the least. Every character who works, who moves, who pushes, who tries to convert effort into a better square is taken. The one who sits still and lets other people move for him survives. That is a much harder thing to say than the drug trade is dangerous, and the scene says it in a line so casual that it sounds like a joke about a slow piece. Which brings the argument back to the small disagreement the scene opened with, because that disagreement was never really about board games. Bodhi said checkers and chess were the same game. D'Angelo said they were not, and what D'Angelo was actually insisting on is that the pieces are unequal from the moment they are set down. In checkers, every piece is identical, and every piece has the same possible future. In chess, you are born a pawn or born a king, and the difference is decided before a single move is made. When D'Angelo says the king stays the king, he is not describing strategy. He is describing inheritance. He is telling two boys from the low rises that the position they were born into is the position they will die in, and he is telling them this while standing in the one spot on the board he thinks is exempt, because he was born into a different position and believes that saved him. The show refuses to fully side with either of them, and that is what makes the writing better than a lesson. D'Angelo is right about the hierarchy. It is real, it is inherited, and Bodhi's belief in advancement turns out to be a fantasy. But D'Angelo is wrong about what the hierarchy does for the people at the top of it, because being higher on that board bought him 20 years and a staged suicide. And Bodhi is wrong about promotion, but right about something else, because in the end the two of them, the nephew and the corner boy, the one who thought he was outside the game and the one who thought he could win it, arrive at the same place by different roads. That is the hidden genius of the scene, and it is not the metaphor itself. Comparing crime to chess is not clever. It has been done 1,000 times, and it is usually a way of making criminals look like grandmasters. What David Simon and Ed Burns do here is invert it. They use the board to strip the glamour out, not add it. Nobody in this scene is playing chess. Two of them are being explained to, and the third one only thinks he is holding the pieces. And they do something structurally unusual with it. They let three characters state their theory of their own lives in their own words, very early, when the audience has no reason to think it matters, and then they spend 5 seasons grading those theories. Wallace's silence, Bodhi's defiance, D'Angelo's detachment. All three answers are wrong, and each one is wrong in a different direction, and each character dies of the specific error he committed at that table. That is not symbolism decorating a story. That is a story built as a test with the answers given away in advance. It also explains why the scene is the one people quote when they try to explain what this show is doing. Most television that wants to say something about a system puts the observation in the mouth of someone standing outside the system, usually a police officer or a journalist, someone whose job is to notice. The chess scene puts it in the mouths of the people inside it, three young men who are not being observant at all, who are just killing an afternoon and arguing about a board game. The critique is not delivered to them. It comes out of them in their own vocabulary, without any of them knowing they are saying anything important. The last thing to sit with is what happens to the board itself. That chessboard exists in the pit because somebody left it there. It does not belong to any of them. It is furniture in a courtyard that also holds the couch and the milk crates and the boys who work the corners. And after that scene, it is essentially never mentioned again by anyone except Bodhi, once, years later, in a park, to a police officer who is trying to use him. Everyone else forgets it. Wallace dies before he can apply it. D'Angelo, who explained it, never once uses it to reason his way out of anything. Only Bodhi keeps it, carries it for 4 seasons, tests it against his own life, and returns a verdict. He is the only one who takes the lesson seriously, and he is the only one who is proven right about the thing that matters, which is that the game is rigged. He earned that knowledge the hard way, over a decade, by doing everything correctly and getting nothing for it. And then, having finally understood the board he was on, he stood on his own square and refused to leave it, and was taken from behind by a piece he never saw coming. That is the answer the scene was building toward from the moment D'Angelo told two boys that they could not play checkers on a chessboard. They could. It would not have changed anything.